Hello and welcome back to Level Up Architects, the channel where we explore the world of architecture one architect at a time. And in today's episode, I will be showcasing the work of a South African architect with the name Jo Noero. But before I do that, I would quickly like to remind everyone to please join me on the 11th of December for a very special charity live stream for Thankmas 2021, where we will be raising money for a charity called New Story. So yes, please set your calendar, make a note in your calendar, come and join me. I'll be discussing a lot of cool things. I'll be streaming for a very long period of time, so if you can just join me for 5 minutes and help out, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Yes. So before we get started, I would like to remind everyone I have social media. Please follow me on your choice of social media, where I will keep you up to date on what's happening on the channel. And also remember to, if you're new around here, subscribe, like the video if you enjoy the content, and ring the bell so that you get notified when I do go live. So let's jump into Jo Noero. I want to just move this side, thank you. Okay. Jo Noero is the principal architect of Noero Architects, this guy. Noero Architects started in 1984, and Jo Noero is quite an established architect. He has a lot of projects under his belt, a lot of beautiful and breathtaking buildings, and I'll be showcasing some of them. Make sure to stay to the end because I'm ending the episode with two very breathtaking houses. I like them very, very much. So yes, Noero, Mr. Noero was a professor at the University of Cape Town, and he's done quite a substantial amount. His practice, let's just scroll up here, his practice is very interesting and has done quite a lot of buildings that have been showcased in famous websites and very good books, and is fairly well known around the world. Well, in the architecture community. I doubt that my audience will necessarily know him, but that's the point of these episodes, so that we can explore all sorts of architects. Yes, this is one thing I want to highlight on his page. He says, architecture is a social art, and as such has a responsibility to not only be useful, but also beautiful. This objective runs through all the work that we do at Noero Architects, he says. So he's saying that there's a social responsibility, and I do believe that they do a lot of community participation in their projects, as well as they have a bit of a responsibility to uplift things. And I will show you why I think this statement is important in some of his works. So let's jump up. Oh, before I go over to his projects, sometimes in these sorts of firms, there are more than one architect. Uno Pereira is one, and Evandro Schwalbach is another. So sometimes I find it a little bit frustrating on these websites. They don't exactly credit some of the other architect and staff members that work on these projects, and I always feel like there should be a little tag at the bottom of every project saying who worked on it, to give people credit for working on a project, even if it's not necessarily in a design capacity. But yes, rant over. Jo Noero, he's the principal architect, and I guess that's who we are going to be focusing on. So the first project I would like to show you is Pelip Housing scheme that was completed in 1999 in New Brighton, Port Elizabeth. Noero Architects has an office in Cape Town as well as one in Port Elizabeth. This is where architecture has a social responsibility and has to be beautiful as well as functional. Now, I think these do have a certain austerity to them and is a beautiful scheme, and has a lot of potential, let me put it that way. You will see he uses very humble materials and tries to uplift the community by providing social housing that is affordable, because we all know housing is a very big crisis around the world and should be addressed by good design, and I do think that there is good design here, and I would like to draw some comparisons to Alejandro Aravena as well as Raj Raval at this point. I'll leave some cards at the top for you to link, click and go and watch those videos after you've watched this video, of course. But yes, these are quite beautiful in a very simple and functional way. And you will see what he's done is he's created, that's the second floor plan, and this is the ground floor plan of this housing scheme, and there's a little road, I almost want to say a walkway that runs through there. The road runs at the bottom here, and you can see how he's intended to create some form of pedestrian space even in here, and creates courtyards for the residents that live in Pelip housing scheme. You'll see he draws it as very bustling and busy. And I think in section he also shows what the urban fabric is like. This building we will be covering next is a very big building, and I think the intentions here are fantastic, creating this very nice urban landscape with housing on the one side and some form of other building to be seen next door. So I think it's beautiful. Here you can see Pelip Housing, very small, but the big building at the back. Yes, so he draws it as very bustling, but in reality I find it's not necessarily as idyllic as he paints it, but I think the intentions of this project are very pure. This is Red Location Cultural Precinct also in Port Elizabeth. It was sort of opened initially, the first phase was opened initially in 2005 or 6, and it's still ongoing, the project. I just want to point out, this is Pelip Housing, and this is a museum. So the Red Location is, let's see here, it's called a National Site of Struggle. So it memorializes and collects art and artifact of the apartheid era. And this is again Pelip Housing, and this is the museum. So this precinct has a bunch of projects that are intended. It's the museum, a library and archive, as well as a gallery and a bunch of other things. So if we look at the museum quickly, it's a very beautiful building in a very rural setting. I think the intentions of this building is wonderful. I think it has a lot of great public spaces and urban fabric to it. And I want to show you the interior space. In the main exhibition hall, he creates these pods where artifacts are stored. These pods, you can see these pods, they're like big containers almost, and inside each pod there's an exhibition with a central item. This is a model of the entire urban landscape that he envisioned for this precinct. This is what I want to show you specifically. That is one of those pods with the exhibition and with the central item. The way the roof structure works is very, very beautiful. It allows light to pour in from the sky, illuminate the space around these pods, but then also the pods sort of become dark except for the central item that he pours and directs the light into. So when you enter one of these pods, I imagine that you would be faced with a very narrow sort of space upwards, but then this central item that you can look at, which is illuminated by the sky. These drawings by Noero are phenomenal. That's the museum quickly. The library is also very beautiful and provides some form of public space again. It's a gorgeous building, and he does like to play with light and allow light in almost sort of factory-like roof shape, if you want to call it that. But Noero does a lot of little tricks that are very modernist to a degree, and I will show that in a little bit, especially in his houses. See, these spaces are really beautiful. Just a pity there aren't any books on the bookshelf. Let's quickly go. I just quickly want to show you the gallery. The gallery is quite important. That's the museum, this is the library, and this is the gallery, the art gallery. So there's a little corrugated steel structure on the site. This is one of the original structures of this informal settlement. This is a very big informal settlement and one of the oldest in Port Elizabeth. So they preserved this shack, if you want to call it that. I prefer to call it an informal building. It's still, architecture is still design, it's still important, and they decided that this would be saved as an artifact alongside this very stark contrast of the new contemporary building sitting next to it. I get a lot of sort of Stephen Hall vibes with the glazing here. It's very cool. It's gorgeous, and the intentions of this place is very pure. But I think there are some issues, and I will show you some of the issues right now. You can see the museum here. This is where the library was built, and this is where the gallery was built. So the museum came first, and Pelip Housing scheme was there, and that's the original informal structure that they saved. All of these people had to be moved, which is a problem. So, as a result, the people of this community eventually ended up, how can I put it, rejecting this building, and there was a riot or some sort of upheaval, and the community shut down this entire project. The museum, the art gallery, and the library got shut down. It's been closed since 2013. I tried to see online whether or not it's been reopened, but I couldn't find anything to indicate that they've resolved the problems that the community had. The community was complaining that their housing situation was terrible and that they would prefer this not to be here, if it makes sense. So hopefully the key members that are involved in this project can help the situation and figure out with community participation. That's where spatial agency and community participation becomes very, very important. To me, if I had to redo this all, I think this whole museum, the art gallery, the library, all of it can just go. Do Pelip Housing, that typology, and more. There are many more examples of this type of housing schemes in South Africa that can work for South Africans. I think this should be all over the site. End of story. And they can maybe build a little small memorial around this. And I think, like I said, the intentions of this project were very pure, and I think the idea was that this building could raise funds for this community and uplift it and do a lot of good things for the community at large. But yes, sometimes good intentions don't work out the way you want them to. These kinds of amenities are very, very much an idea that stems from a place of privilege, I feel. And I know they can be very uplifting, but I think Pelip Housing is uplifting enough. To me, what's happening here is poverty is literally facing off with privilege. This is Wynberg Girls High School. Now you might be wondering, where's the building? Yes, where is it? The building is hidden below these two grass banks and faces a very old, one of the original buildings of the school. You will see here, yes. Those are the grass embankments, and that's the school. again, this is in stark contrast with the previous stuff. This is a very, very fancy school in a very nice neighborhood. You can see there's even like a pediment on the facade of the building. It's very, very, very nice. But I love the way he hides some of the functional parts of the school below a public space, this grass bank. And it's very nice. Oh, you can see the mountains in the background. Yes, did I say? Yeah, it's in Wynberg, Cape Town. Of course, it's Wynberg High School. You can see the section of the building here, and you can see a teacher speaking to some of her students on the grass, and I think it's wonderful. Yes, apart from those images, I want to show you the section. Here you can see some of the walkways underneath the grass section, and it has a way of allowing light into the classrooms. First of all, this is on the other side, and the embankment will sort of come backwards. That's the grass roof portion of the building, and you can see how much natural light there is in the classrooms themselves. Yeah, here you can see that's grass all the way up there, blazing to allow light into the classroom, and yes, just providing such a lovely space for learning, in my opinion. Again, he does such wonderful drawings, Mr. Noero. It's great. I think in this project he achieves his goal of making a functional piece of architecture, but also a beautiful piece of architecture, and also socially responsible, because it doesn't detract from the ecology. Not that grass is really ecology, but at least it gives back the space it took in the form of the grass embankments. So I think he did a very wonderful job of that. Here you can see the classrooms on the side, and there are more classrooms on the other sides. Moving on to the next project. This is House Sapieka. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't know. But this is the first of two houses I quickly want to showcase. I think these are beautiful, and I think these showcase his design sensibility and some of his sort of, I want to say, modernist tendencies come out to play in this, but he also keeps a regional style at hand. It's very beautiful. So the roof structure reminds one of a tugboat because it's next to the sea, which is nice. It's light, it's airy, modernist little circular windows. I love it. It's wonderful. Such a lovely courtyard to sit in with a little bit of a library at the end. These bay windows are wonderful. We will see an image just now where he shows the view out of these windows. You can see the mountains in the distance as well as the ocean. And yes, it's a wonderful house. I think it's very beautiful. I think it's finished impeccably. I think the choice of materials is not necessarily over the top. I think it's very humble, but it's very well detailed. And I love the brickwork. It's just white. It's such a Cape Town thing to do, if I can call it that. Yes, it's a vernacular. It's the proper word for that. The Cape vernacular is very white, and he learns a lot, I think, from architects like Harvey Fagan. I will show you some more Harvey Fagan-esque things that he does, but this house was built in two portions. The first was the main house, which is wonderful, and then secondly they built this additional, I don't know if it's a guest house, but it's a swimming pool and a guest house, and very circular in nature, which is a little bit unusual for him. He usually does a lot of angular shapes, and that's why I mentioned in the beginning of the video that there are more than one architect in this firm, and sometimes these architects have a profound influence, and I can't say for sure that it's one of the other architects in the firm's influence that made these sort of a little bit more softer, rounder objects. But it's possible. We don't know, because I don't know who was responsible for the design of this. It was likely Nero, but in association with his associates. But this is quite beautiful as well, the circular swimming pool that reminds one of a farm water tank. Yeah, farms in South Africa have these circular concrete structures filled with water to water, say a fruit tree grove or some lands, and yeah, the swimming pool reminds me of that a little bit. But it's gorgeous, again with the brick, white, just bagged and painted brick, vernacular. It's gorgeous. Anyway, let's move on to the very final house I want to show you. The final house I want to show you is Castle Rock Beach House, which was completed in 2017, and it's located in Castle Rock, Cape Town. This is again one of those moments where he does that little bit of modernism with a little bit of Cape vernacular, and he brings in this lovely chimney that reminds me very much of the sort of chimneys that Harvey Fagan does. I'll do an episode on Harvey Fagan at some point in time. But this is a very beautiful house. And he swaps out his angular shapes in this building for softer, rounded curves so that it doesn't interfere and sort of clash with the fynbos, the ecology of the landscape. Let's see. This building, I know this looks strange, but what this structure actually does is it houses a glass roof that retracts all the way to there and opens up the entire house to the sky. And he wraps it with this timber cladding, which reminds me of very modernist auditoriums very much. So it's beautiful. Yes, there you can see the wonderful view this place must have, and that Harvey Fagan-esque chimney. Yes, it's so beautiful. I told you, it's gorgeous. This is such a sexy building. That entire glass panel slides back and opens up this building to the sky and to the sun, and the owners and the inhabitants of the building can close all the other windows if the Western Cape's winds are too much, and they can retreat into the house and still have some fresh air without having to struggle with the winds. Here you can see how that roof opens up, how this house is sort of terraced and sunken into the landscape and has this breathtaking view of the ocean. It's like, yeah, wow, it's beautiful. It's such a gorgeous house, and it's small as well. From what I understand, Nero architects, they straight up refuse to design a house for a client if the client wants, say, a 600 square meter house. That's not socially responsible to build a 600 square meter house. This is socially responsible because it's on a site. Let's see here, it says the site is a mere 220 square meters and the footprint of the building is only allowed to be 110 square meters. So they get a lot of building out of that 110 square meter footprint. And this is such a sexy house. I mean, look at it. Imagine that's your kitchen. I would die. I would absolutely just be in heaven with this building. It's the curves are just so sexy. I mean, look at that. Wow. It's so gorgeous. It's really fantastic. And I think here Harvey Fagan very much achieves that idea of social responsibility and making something functional as well as beautiful. I think that'll do it for today. I will remind everyone to follow me on the social media of their choice. If you're new around here, please subscribe. It's free for today only, so subscribe. Hit the like button if you're still around, and also ring the bell, because then YouTube will notify you when I go live and you can join me and have a chat. I always encourage people to say something in chat. I always try to look at chat at the end of the video and see if I can respond. Actually, in the previous live stream, someone did talk to me, and it was actually very helpful. So yes, I really appreciate everyone watching. Thank you for watching, and I will see everyone in the next video. Oh yes, remember Thankmas. Come join me on the 11th of December. Okay, thanks. Bye.